Yeah, I think you see the on-court chemistry all the time. You see the post-game interviews where you've got one guy talking and the whole crowd of them behind him. Like that is, that's all great to see, and everybody can see that. That's what gets clipped a lot. But what doesn't always get clipped is that even behind closed doors, even when it's off the floor, these guys are very close. This is a team that has had a lot of like players get their high school jerseys retired recently. J Dub just had his retired in Phoenix. Ed had his last year. Kenrich Williams had his in Waco recently. I think last year or the year before. These when you see those events, all the Thunder guys go out to that. Like that's not something that they're required to do. For J Dubs, for example, they had the entire team. They had to take 3 buses in order to get everybody to go to that high school gym and just go watch him get his jersey retired because they wanted to. At All-Star Weekend, it was only Chet and technically Jared McCain in the celebrity three-point contest, but those were the only Thunder guys who were actually participating in the events. But you still had so many Thunder players who went out to All-Star Weekend just to go support them. Like, those are the types of things that don't necessarily get clipped online or people don't get to see it as much. But, like, that chemistry really is genuine, and it even happens behind closed doors.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzer with you, the voice of NBA Jam. From top journalists and authors to rising influencers and insiders, Hoopsology brings you the voices driving basketball forward. With elite guests and sharp analysis, Matt, Justin, and Alan keep you plugged into everything hoops. From downtown, boom shakalaka.
Just kind of a basic question for you. What has been the key of this team keeping their championship mentality this season? Because we've seen in previous sports or previous seasons a team that wins the title, there's a letdown for whatever reason. But yet the Thunder seem to be better than ever.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, that's just kind of a natural thing that happens, especially also when you're a team that's as young as OKC is. It'd be very easy for them to kind of get caught up in their success too much and, kind of get a little bit sidetracked on things. But, Mark has been asked that. Mark Dagnall's been asked that a lot this season, and the guys as well. And he just said that this is a team that's very internally motivated. Like, he doesn't really have to go in the locker room and say, hey, you guys got to pick up the slack here and do this better. Like, this is a team that individually these guys just want to be great, both in their individual careers and then as a team as well. And I think when you have a group like that, it really does help when there are opportunities for you to have a letdown, as you mentioned. So, yeah, that's kind of just been the biggest thing with this team is they're not satisfied. They won one championship. They want to win a lot more. They want to get, further and further and keep this thing going as long as they can. So that's the big thing that stood out with them.
At this point of the season, what is motivating them besides just winning another championship? Because the NBA's a grind day to day. What are they focusing on to get better, improve, and what is kind of do they worry about like outside discussions about the team that might motivate them? That's been a thing of the past in terms of, media that might be criticizing a team. That team will use that as motivation to, get better. Do they really worry about that, or they don't care about outside noise? They're focused on their individual goals as a team.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the sense that they obviously say they don't care about the outside noise. Sometimes people say that and they do care. I really don't get the sense that they do. These are guys who just, like I mentioned, just want to continue to get better. They got this mindset, this mantra that they always like to say. It's the 0-0 mindset, where regardless of yesterday, regardless of tomorrow, regardless of even in the middle of a game, what the score is, it's 0-0 for them. They're constantly just looking to focus on the present and be as good as they can be in whatever their individual roles are as a team. So that's kind of the mantra that has been the case for this team, even back when they weren't winning a lot of games a few seasons ago. That's always been their approach, and now we're starting to see that it's leading to some success, but it never really has changed for them.
So let's talk about SGA. I find him very interesting. Currently at the Kia MVP ladder, he's first, and a lot of times you see him currently within the MVP race, injuries. How's that going to factor in terms of who's winning MVP? Is SGA worried about that at all? I don't think there's anything wrong about trying to get MVP. I think that's a huge accolade. Does he care about that, or is he truly like a team first time? I mean, that's a team first guy. That's kind of cliche in terms of athletes. They don't care about individual awards, but when the career's all said and done, they actually do. So, what's kind of his feelings on MVP in individual awards?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that he wants to be great. Like he considers himself someone that is a perfectionist. He wants to be the best version of himself. He has said multiple times that the way that he really measures success is championships. Like last season, a lot of people were very quick to crown him as one of the top players in the league, and his response is always, I haven't won anything yet. So like that is his measure of success. And there are obviously individual accolades that come in the process, MVP being last year for him. I'm sure he's not going to say no to the award if they offer it to him again this year, but I think it's something that comes within the flow of the season, as he's already trying to make sure his team is playing the best as it can. If he gets an award in the process individually, then I think that's all great and welcome. But yeah, the main motivation for him has always been championships. He wants to win multiple times, and that's kind of just been what's been driving him.
I want to talk about Chet Holmgren, and I saw one of your tweets, and I just want to read this just to kind of get your perspective on it. It says just about his first All-Star game. What was kind of the feelings for him heading into his first All-Star experience? Because I think as fans, we're pretty callous in terms of we're selfish as viewers, right? We don't really care about the players' feelings in terms of their own experience during All-Star weekend. But yeah, this is very special for Chet Holmgren. This is his first All-Star game. And you mentioned you're out there in Los Angeles. Can you just talk about what that meant to him? Just him going through all the All-Star festivities, like how was his temperament compared to just the day-to-day grind of the NBA season?
Yeah, I think if you were to just look at, just his resume, it would kind of just be like, okay, it's assumed that he's going to reach this point. I mean, this is a guy who was a top prospect coming out of high school. This is a guy who was a great player on a great team at Gonzaga in college. This is a guy who was the second overall pick. Like, it's like, okay, he's expected to do this. He's expected to be an all-star at some point. But you also got to remember that this is a guy who missed his whole first year in the NBA because of an injury. This is a guy who dealt with more injuries throughout these past few seasons as well. Like, he's had to overcome a lot in order to get to this point. He's had to also change his mindset. I talked to him recently about how when he came into the league, he wanted to be great, but it's almost like he just wanted it all at once. And he kind of had to really learn how to, appreciate the process of becoming great and become more intentional with everything that you do. So it really has been like a learning experience, a journey for him these past few seasons. So for that to get rewarded now with his first All-Star selection, you could tell that it was special to him. So yeah, it's definitely something that he's appreciative of. It's never been the ultimate goal, kind of similar to a lot of these guys that we talk about on this team, but it is something that matters to him and that he's definitely grateful for.
I want to pivot a second from just OKC to talk about your experience covering the All-Star game. I'm very curious about this. There was some criticism in terms of, the NBA flying out influencers or inviting influencers to cover the All-Star game. Was that really prevalent for you as a journalist in terms of like those two worlds like colliding, or you're just doing your job and that didn't really matter when it comes to All-Star game coverage? Because it does seem like the internet made a big deal out of that, and also there's really good influencers that actually care about the game of basketball, but yet their primary popularity might be in technology or in pop culture, but yet they really love the NBA. I'm just curious about that storyline. You covered the this All-Star weekend. Was there any kind of interference from just kind of influencers that were kind of operating in bad faith, or do you think that was just an overrated storyline from the internet, you think?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think there's some more moderating that could have been done, more selections of who was credentialed and stuff. There were a few instances, without pointing out names or even the players involved, where some reporters would try to get like selfies with players after like a media availability, and it's like, that's just stuff that, like, being a professional, you just know you shouldn't do that. So there was some of that, but other than that, I mean, I totally get why the NBA does it. It's obviously catering more to the younger audience. They're trying to push, their socials and all that. So I totally understand it. And those few people are like few and far between. There's plenty of people who go out there and do really good work. So overall, I definitely understand why they did it. I kind of would wish that they didn't involve it in the events, like the skills shootout.
Agreed.
For example, with Drewski,
Yep.
throwing the passes, like even if you're throwing a pass over Chet's head, like that's like you're really sailing that thing, and that's going into the stands. Like, maybe keep it out of the event specifically. You've got the celebrity 3-point contest and the celebrity game and stuff. I think there's a time and place for having those people in those events, but when it crosses over into the actual main events, I think maybe that's when it gets a little bit iffy for me as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And then one more media question for you. A lot's been made of just the NBA media, and I think, people that watch other sports, I think the prevailing narrative is that you see a lot of podcasters usually dominate the media space, but just covering the game and interviewing reporters like yourself, there is a lot of good work happening, around the country. And it may look different, but still the excellent reporting is taking place. Kind of what's your feelings on just NBA media in general? Just with you in the room with just other, beat reporters, or when you travel to other cities, kind of getting the sense of just how these different teams are covered around the league. Do you have like positive feelings? Are you worried? Is there any concern? I'm just very curious from just your perspective, because you know more than just, some random person on the internet or even, a national media pundit. Just kind of your feelings on just the NBA media these days.
Yeah, I just love that there are so many different ways that you can cover this sport. There's so many different perspectives that you can have, even if you're just watching the same game. Like, for example, for our the Thunder writers in the area here, there's not a lot of us, compared to, like, let's say people covering the Lakers or the Knicks is obviously a huge market where if you go out to one of those, I mean, it's a packed interview room. There's so many people from all different outlets. This group is a little bit closer. I think it's allowed us to get a little bit, more of a tight-knit feel. And I just think it's so cool that there's people doing or covering this team in so many different ways. We've got someone like Locked On Thunder and Rylan Stiles, who mostly podcasts, does some incredible work. I don't know how he's able to podcast that many times in the same day. Like, he'll do 3 pods in a day. We've got like Clemente, who will do like Thunderwire, and that's like the volume of posts that he has is insane. We've got like my friend Adam Francisco does the Suave Report, and he mostly focuses on like the lifestyle sort of things. And like, there's a big team in terms of fashion stuff, and he really focuses on that. So I think that's so cool. There's so many different ways you can cover one team. So that's kind of what really stands out to me with NBA media.
You brought up the fashion. Could you talk about that? I think that's an underrated part of this team. There's that infamous commercial. I forgot. I think SGA, Chet Holmgren, and I forgot who else is in it. I think it's State Farm. They're all wearing the same outfit. Like, that's kind of an identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an identity of this team I don't think we've seen before. We've seen players that are into fashion, but never like a total team identity. Can you talk about that in terms of what fashion means to this team?
Yeah, they love their fashion, without a doubt. I don't know if you've heard of League Fits. So they have like the all NBA version, but like with leagues, so like the all League Fits teams. And like Shai has made the first team. He's won MVP. You've got like J-Dub, Jalen Williams has done it. You even got like Lou Dort, I think, has earned a selection. They just brought in Jared McCain, who's also very into that side of it too. So yeah, it's definitely something that they enjoy doing. It's kind of a little bit funny because like there's not a lot of shopping stuff here in OKC. You're not going to get like a big designer mall or anything like that. So they do a lot of it on the road together when they're out in LA or out in New York or whatever the case may be. And sometimes they're like competing for items, that they want to wear before somebody else on the team gets it, because a lot of them are the same sizes and stuff. So, it's definitely a cool aspect. It's something that they like doing. It's all fun and games at the end of the day. It's not that serious for them, but it is something they enjoy.
Yeah, it's a form of team camaraderie, brings them together. And I was mistaken about the tweet. I meant that I saw a tweet about on your timeline about Chris Paul, and he recently announced his retirement, and he left a huge mark on SGA and Lou Dort, just about his preparation. Could you talk about that in terms of Chris Paul's professionalism? I think he gets a bad rap around the league, but yeah, he had a huge impact on OKC. I think the way he retires kind of unceremoniously profile throughout the league. I think he deserved a bigger send-off. But what was Chris Paul's impact on the Thunder and kind of this era of this team specifically?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Paul, to me, is one of the most impactful players that's ever, been a part of just Oklahoma City basketball in general. And I'm not even just talking the Thunder. Like, when he was coming in as a rookie with the Hornets, they were in Oklahoma City because of Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. And that was kind of what really, like, showed, okay, the city of Oklahoma City can actually support an NBA team. We see all the love that the Hornets are getting. Maybe if an opportunity comes down the line, they can get a team here. And then it ended up happening with the Thunder, obviously through Seattle and stuff. So in that sense, he was very important for even setting the stage for Thunder basketball. And then when he actually joined the team in 2019, that was a group that, was ending an era. Kevin Durant had left a few seasons before. Russell Westbrook had left. Paul George had left. Like, it was the start of a rebuild in OKC. You just trade for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's a young guard, needs somebody who can show him the ropes. And you bring in this guy, Chris Paul, and he just was instantly a veteran presence, a leader to guys like Shai, guys like Lou Dort, the only two Thunder players who are still on the team when Chris Paul was there. And that team had, I think it was like a 0.2 or 1.2% chance of making the playoffs this year. They still made the playoffs that year. Like, they surpassed expectations. They were actually a good team. And I think it really set the foundation for the success that we're seeing now. So very unfortunate the way he did retire, because, I think everybody wanted to see him end it with the Clippers. It would have just made sense. Full circle moment. Didn't happen. But as Shai put it best when I asked him, like, none of that negates the impact that he's had on this game. He's one of the best point guards of all time. So many guys in the NBA right now look up to him. And he's going to go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer without a doubt.
Yeah, I totally agree. Shifting back to SGA, this is a question from one of my co-hosts. They wanted to get your perspective on the criticism of him, of the foul baiting. And can you talk about, I think this is kind of the prevailing criticism around SGA during his career. Is this a factor that he even cares about, number one? And then number two, in terms of just the fan base, coaches, otherwise, are they even paying attention to this? How big of this truly is in terms of, foul baiting and his SGA's legacy? Is that even really a prevailing, part actually in reality for this team, you think?
Yeah, I don't think it is at all. It's definitely something that, social media has ran with, some national people have ran with. Obviously, anytime he's in another arena, they're going to run with it and, call him a free throw merchant while he's shooting free throws and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, you also got to realize this is a guy who has led the league in drives for multiple seasons in a row. He's one of the leading leaders in drives again this season. That alone leads to contact. That leads to drawing fouls. It's just going to naturally happen when you're as aggressive as he is at getting downhill. And then also you factor in he's not even leading the league in free throw attempts this season. Like, I'm pretty sure it's Luka Doncic and then Denny Avdija and then Shai. I don't have it on me right now, but he's not even like leading the league in free throw attempts. There are guys who get it more than he does. So at the end of the day, I don't think he cares about it. He's talked about it before and has pretty much just said, I could not care less. He can't control both the whistle and he also can't control people's reaction to when he does get the whistle, So he's solely focused on playing his game, doing the best that he can. And then if it comes from the free throw line, that's great. But if it doesn't, he can also score in any other way as well. So that's kind of his mindset about it.
Another question that my co-host had, they brought up tanking, and they said that there's a report that the OKC front office has been driving many of the anti-taking complaints. One, is this accurate? And two, if it is, what's driving their approach, since they're at the top of the league? And what's their motivation in providing these complaints, if that it is true?
Yeah, I have not spoken with anyone about if it is them being the driving force in those conversations. But what I will say about it is that it's something that is, like with Utah, for example, they're kind of the center of all of this. It's one thing if, you are ruling guys out because of injuries. Like recently, Jaren Jackson Jr. just had season-ending surgery. He can't play. Without a doubt, that's totally fair. But when you are purposely benching guys in the fourth quarter in order to lose a game, that's when it becomes, I think more of an issue, because tanking has always been a thing. Like, it's just, but when it's that blatant, I could see why it would cause a problem. I can say that I don't think OKC is overly concerned with Utah's first round pick. I don't think they are fully, barking at the NBA, hey, we got to fix this because we're going to risk losing Utah's pick. It's top 8 protected this year. I can say I don't think they're doing that at all. But it is something that is like, okay, I think there needs to be some sort of change to the rules. Shams has recently tweeted out today that the NBA is looking into that. I think that's totally fair, and we'll just see, what comes of that.
With the Thunder fan base, when you have a team like Utah or a team that's, struggling, or in case I'm a huge Bulls fan, they're just stuck in this path of mediocrity. I'm curious, are they into those type of games just based on just the OKC perspective of, hey, it's another win for the Thunder, and they're not so much worried about what the other team is doing? Or do they care about the quality of competition that's on the court, even though they're rooting for OKC, but they don't want the other team just to fold? Want it to be competitive and entertaining. What's kind of the perspective of just the local Thunder fans?
In regards to, like, if the team OKC is playing is?
Yeah, just competitiveness, like in terms of how they balance, rooting for their team compared to seeing a good product on the floor for the tickets they pay for watching them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because, at the end of the day, like, it is an entertainment industry at the end of the day. And, you know, I feel for any fans who, like, this is the one game they're able to go out to because I'm just using an example. The Lakers are in town, and they've always wanted to see LeBron James, and then LeBron James sits. Like, I could see how that would be, you know, problematic, just in the sense that, you know, you're supposed to be catering to these fans, and you're not putting the best product out there on the floor. So in that sense, I understand it. But to be honest, when it comes to the Thunder fan base, like, they've had so many injuries, or OKC's had so many injuries this season. I think they're more concerned with, are our guys going to be playing than, hey, the Jazz are sitting Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson tonight. Like,
Gotcha.
I think they really want to see these guys healthy. It hasn't really been the case this season. You know, J-Dub's had his injuries. Shai's been dealing with an abdominal strain. Same for AJ Mitchell. So that, to me, is their main concern right now, is the injuries on OKC specifically.
So heading into the second half of the season, the Thunder are on top. Still a lot of great competition within the Western Conference. The Spurs, Nuggets, Rockets. Despite their turmoil, even the Lakers, you can't, you know, ever count them out totally with LeBron and Luka and Austin Reeves. Where do you see points of improvement of this team, yourself, and then as a team in terms of the organization? Where are they looking to improve to be in their best form when the playoffs come around?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's health. You know, they've been without so many guys for long stretches that something that Mark always talks about is you want guys healthy, not just so obviously they're able to play, but also you want to be able to build these sample sizes of, okay, what combinations work really well on the floor, what doesn't, and that way they can turn to that in the playoffs. So when you're as shorthanded as OKC has been, you know, you're not really fully sure what is going to work and what isn't going to work. Like, you know, Isaiah Hartenstein had missed so much time, and that's valuable chances for him to be able to play alongside Chet Holmgren and continue to build that chemistry. So, like, that's the main thing first and foremost. They need to get healthy so they can start to experiment some more with all these different combinations. And then, like, once they are healthy, I mean, shooting is always a big thing. They've always been a streaky shooting team from deep. Even when they won the championship last season, they were shooting like 33% from deep in the playoffs, which is not great. Their defense was able to kind of help keep them afloat, but, like, that's always something that they can improve on. I think in a half-court setting, you know, they could definitely use some more people stepping up in terms of being a shot creator. Right now, it's a lot of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, especially with J-Dub out. AJ Mitchell has been out as well, so that's definitely been another scoring option that they haven't had. So those are like some minor things that they could definitely work on. But for the most part, you know, I think once they get healthy, this is clearly a team that's talented enough to go out there and win it all again.
Which teams do you think poses the biggest threat to them from a matchup perspective in the Western Conference? Or even if they do reach the NBA Finals in the East, that might be of concern for the Thunder?
Yeah, I think Denver, kind of entering the season, was expected to be the biggest threat for OKC. They took them to 7 games in the second round of the playoffs last season. I still view the Nuggets as the second, or the biggest threat to OKC. This is a team that obviously has Nikola Jokic, best player in the world. Jamal Murray is playing at an all-star level. He just made his first all-star selection. And then a big thing with the Nuggets last season was that they just didn't have as much depth as OKC. That was like the big edge that the Thunder had in that series that I think was one of the big factors to help them win. But now you bring in Jonas Valanciunas. You have a real backup center for Nikola Jokic. You got Tim Hardaway Jr., another shooter, to help kind of replace some of the production that you lost when you traded away Michael Porter Jr. You got a two-way wing in Cam Johnson. You've got Bruce Brown is back, and we obviously know how important he was during that first championship run. Even like Peyton Watson has now become like a really good player. You know, before he got hurt, I know he's dealing with a hamstring injury right now. He was playing great basketball. So this is a team that I think is very talented. It can definitely present matchup problems for OKC because when you have Jokic, that's a problem for pretty much everybody. And then you add some depth to that some depth to that as well. Like, to me, that's the biggest threat for OKC would be Denver.
If OKC goes back to back, do you see them having dynasty potential in this new era of the CBA? Like, what does that look like if, you know, OKC is winning titles on a consistent basis? Do you think they stick together, or do you think just the mechanics of the league, they'll be forced to split apart?
Yeah, I think the big three, I could definitely see this big three sticking around long term. They just signed long-term deals. J-Dub and Chet did this offseason. Shai also signed his extension. So they're locked in terms of that core. It is going to be accounting for 75% of its salary cap next season, you know, those three players. So there are going to be some limitations that come with that, obviously, where, you know, a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, for example, as OKC has a team option on him for $28.5 million. I'm sure they would love to bring him back, but they're probably going to have to restructure that deal, you know, and get him to come back on a bit of a pay cut. Does he want to do that, or does he want to go get a big payday somewhere else? That's really going to be up to him. And the same case can be said for a guy like Lou Dort, who also OKC has a team option on. Maybe he wants to go and get paid somewhere else. That's definitely a possibility. So there are going to be some factors like that will just naturally happen as you get more expensive. But for the most part, like, the formula for this team is we're locking up the big three, and then we're going to have kind of a revolving door of role players, guys who are on budget deals, which is one of the reasons why OKC, you know, values these picks so much. They can turn those picks into real contributors, like AJ Mitchell, for example, and he's on a budget deal. Like, he's making a couple million a year, providing great production, and he can still fit on the salary cap or on the books alongside this big three. Like, those are the types of guys that they're going to be looking to get. And maybe they do have to move on from guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, Lou Dort at some point, but yeah, as long as they're able to kind of sustain that method, this could definitely be a dynasty without a doubt.
What is one underrated aspect of the Thunder that people should know about, either this season or overall in its current core players, that fans should just be aware of? It could be something on the court or something personal that makes up kind of the cohesion of this team that fans should be more aware of, that's not being really discussed in the national media.
Yeah, I think you see the on-court chemistry all the time. You see the post-game interviews where you've got one guy talking and the whole crowd of them behind him. Like, that is, you know, that's all great to see, and everybody can see that. That's what gets clipped a lot. But what doesn't always get clipped is that even behind closed doors, even when it's off the floor, these guys are very close. You know, this is a team that has had a lot of, like, players get their high school jerseys retired recently. J-Dub just had his retired in Phoenix. Ted had his last year. Kenrich Williams had his in Waco recently, I think last year or the year before. Like, these, when you see those events, all the Thunder guys go out to that. Like, that's not something that they're required to do. For J-Dubs, for example, they had the entire team. They had to take 3 buses in order to get everybody to go to that high school gym and just go watch him get his jersey retired because they wanted to. You know, at All-Star Weekend, it was only Chet and technically Jared McCain in the celebrity three-point contest, but those were the only Thunder guys who were actually participating in the events. But you still had so many Thunder players who went out to All-Star Weekend just to go support them. Like, those are the types of things that don't necessarily get clipped online or people don't get to see it as much. But, like, that chemistry really is genuine, and it even happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, I noticed even when they won the title, it was just different in terms of their expressions compared to other teams. I think this team's very unique. And I think that's a positive for the NBA in terms of, you know, them possibly being, you know, a dynasty in this new era that we're going to see. Going back to when you're out there for All-Star Weekend, there's a lot of discussions on expansion. Still rumors at this point, nothing confirmed. But if it is true that Seattle does get an expansion team, how do you feel about that in terms of, you know, Seattle getting their team back? And previously we know the history of, you know, that, you know, the franchise came from Seattle to Oklahoma City. Is there any kind of feelings within OKC about that? Do they care about that? Are you observing anything about that? Seattle does in fact get their team back. Kind of what's your feelings, what you heard about expansion over the past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I don't think anyone would say that the Seattle fan base deserved to lose their team. I think maybe the organization, there was talks about getting their arena renewed and stuff like that, and that's kind of what led to this whole thing. But, like, it was never a matter of the fans didn't love the Supersonics. You know, like, that fan base, for them, if they were to get their team back, I'd be 100% for it. That's awesome. Obviously, I get to travel to Seattle then. That'd be great to get to go out to Seattle because that's a great city as well. But, yeah, that'd be great if they're able to get. I know, like, Vegas was also talked about as kind of like one of the other favorites to get a team. I think that's great. I think expansion would be great for the league. This league is definitely deep enough now to where, you know, you can afford to kind of spread the wealth a little bit with the players and the talent around the league. So I think it would be great. In Seattle specifically, that fan base deserves to have their team back. They definitely have earned that, so that'd be great.
So final question for you. What are some storylines that you're observing through the rest of the league that you're just keeping an eye on that may not be reported or underrated, or you find fascinating heading into the second half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it's been reported, it's been talked about, but one thing that I really am keeping an eye on is this 65-game rule for all these major awards. Like, it's become a real situation right now where, like, some big names are getting left off of these awards because of this rule. Giannis Antetokounmpo being a big one. Nikola Jokic is 2 games missed away from being out of the MVP race, and this is a guy who obviously is a 3-time MVP. Would be in consideration for it again this season. There's some other guys like Victor Wembanyama, I think, has missed around 14 games. That's potentially your defensive player of the year right there. If you were to miss some games, all of a sudden, he's not able to win, just like it was last year as well. So that to me is something that I'm really looking out for, is just to see at what point does the NBA decide that, okay, this rule, I understand why they do it to get guys to play games more, but the way I've always looked at it is that, at the end of the day, the people who are voting on those awards are going to realize a guy didn't play 65 games, and they will just naturally not vote for him because of that. We don't need a rule set in place in order to know that this guy who played 40 games probably shouldn't win MVP. Let us decide if we should consider him or not. But I think to have a specific rule that would potentially completely prohibit a guy from being in consideration, I don't think there's any need for that. So that's something that I'm looking out for to see if that is a change in the near future.
Justin, thank you very much for the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, on the upcoming projects, and again, where they can catch your work?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at JustIntoHoops. You can find my work at the Oklahoman. I've got a weekly podcast called the Thunder Buddies with our columnist Joe Masada that we also do. And in terms of stuff that's in the works, I've got some more features coming out. Just had one today on Jared McCain, new guy for OKC, and just kind of how he's always fit the Thunder culture and DNA. Now it's just official that he's on the team. But there's some more stuff in the works as well. Definitely worth staying tuned for. But yeah, I appreciate you for having me on, man. This is a lot of fun. And always good to talk hoops with a fellow Justin as well.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you making the time. Thank you very much, Justin. Good luck the rest of the way. Thank you.
No worries, man. Appreciate it.